All right, scholars, now that you have worked on lowercase I and j, we are going to move on to uppercase I and j. We're going to actually start with the uppercase J, so we're on the side with the jumping jackrabbit. And you'll notice I have my paper already slanted to the left, right? Slanted for left-handed writing. Remember, if you write with your right hand, you're going to slant this way slightly. But as a left-handed writer, I'm going to slant this way. Pencils are down. I want you to watch me do my trace and try first. All right, so scholars, for the uppercase J, we're starting actually just a titch below the baseline, just a little bit. And we're going to curve up to the top line, drop below the baseline, loop, and cross at the baseline to make the kick-out tail. So watch me do one. I want you to especially watch this area by the baseline, right? There's a lot of crossing there that happens. So watching, please, starting just a titch below the baseline. I'm curving up to the top line, drop below the baseline, loop, cross at the baseline, kick out tail. Right? Mine's probably not quite perfect, but you can certainly tell it's an uppercase J. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for the next one. I want you to really watch everything that's happening kind of right in this area. All right? So I'm starting just a titch below the baseline, curving around to the top line, drop below the baseline, loop, cross at the baseline for the kick-out tail. Right, watching again, starting a titch below the baseline, curving around to the top line, drop below the baseline, loop, cross at the baseline for the kick-out tail. Okay. I think you should watch me do another trace and try before we start one on our own. Really watch what I'm doing with my curve at the beginning and where all of this action is happening right here. Right? Look where my pencil's pointing right now. Look. Right? This area of the baseline is very busy. So starting at the baseline, right? A titch below the baseline. Curve around to the top line. Drop below the baseline, loop, cross at the baseline for the kick-out tail. Watching me, set your pencils down. I'm starting just a titch below the baseline. I'm curving up to the top line. Drop below the baseline, making my loop, crossing at the baseline for the kick-out tail. All right, you are ready to give it a try. Remember, be patient with yourself. Pencils are up. We're tracing first. Trace with me, starting at the baseline. Curving to the top line. Drop below the baseline. Make the loop. Cross at the baseline. Kick out tail. All right, the moment you've been waiting for. Starting a titch below the baseline. All right, we're going to try one. Curving to the top line, drop below the baseline, loop, cross at the baseline for the kick-out tail. Take a quick moment. See where you might feel like you need to improve as we do the next one. Here we go. One more trace and try, everyone. Starting a titch below the baseline, curving to the top line, drop below the baseline, loop, cross at the baseline for the kick-out tail. All right, everyone, big deep breath. All right, we're going to try our best one yet. Starting a titch below the baseline, curving around to the top line, drop below the baseline, making the loop, cross at the baseline for the kick out tail. All right, scholars, you're about to trace and try a few more of your own. Before you do that, two quick things. Going up here just a little bit to that jumping jackrabbit, if you're listening and paying attention to this part of the lesson, watching the video, I'd like you to make a little arrow that's pointing at the trampoline. Show your teacher you were following along with the video by making an arrow that's pointing to the trampoline. Then, scholars, you're going to try, trace, one more J, and then try at least 6 of them. Watch that you're touching the top line. Watch that your loop, is crossing right here at the baseline. And then you can even try this JA combination, but notice, scholars, look at this one. It did not touch the top line, right? So you want to make sure, you're going up. That kick out, crossing at the baseline for the kick out tail becomes the up and over of the A. You want to do at least 2 of those. There's space for you to maybe even try a couple more of them than that. So pause right now and take care of that trace and try, at least 6, and the jaw. Jaw, do that now. How did you do with your uppercase J's? Before we go to the uppercase I, maybe take a quick look. Did you touch the top line? Did your loop cross at the baseline for the kick out tail? Those are 2 things you could look at and check to see how you did. Maybe make some fixes if you need to. Then we are ready for the uppercase I. So going back to the other side of the page, the uppercase I. Set your pencils down. You're watching me do a trace and try first, so you will not need your pencil yet. So scholars, this one starts actually in between 2 lines. So we're starting here in between the baseline and the middle line. Kind of in that middle of those 2. So you'll hear me say, starting in the bottom middle. Starting in the bottom middle. Make a point. Baseline loop. Kick out tail. Watch me try one. Starting in the bottom middle. Point. Loop. Kick out tail. Now that kick out tail, as you can see down here from the word it, does connect to the next letter. Watch me. Again, starting at the bottom middle. Point. Loop. Kick out. Watching me. Pencils are still down, scholars. Starting at the bottom middle. Point. Loop. Kick out. Watching me. Well, you go ahead. We're ready. Pencils up. Check the slant of your paper. Starting in the bottom middle. Point. Loop. Kick out. Now, scholars, make sure you're touching the baseline here at the beginning and at the end for your kick out, and that your loop is touching the top line. Those are some things to watch as we try our first one together. Ready? Starting in the bottom middle. Point. Loop. Kick out. Let's trace another one. Starting at the bottom middle. Point. Loop. Kick out. Starting at the bottom middle. Point. Loop. kick out. Now, scholars, we're going to trace and try one more together, but what I want you to also make sure you're really being careful of, I'm going to make one over here. I'm going to show you incorrectly, right? So if I start at the bottom middle, make my point, when I make my loop, I want to be careful that I'm not making too big of a loop, right? That is a loop that's had probably too many tacos. Don't make it quite that wide of a loop, right? A much thinner loop. Let's try one more. Pencils are ready. Starting at the bottom middle, point, thin loop, kick out tail. All right, writers, you are ready to continue. So here you go. 1 to trace, at least 6 more to try. Watching that you're touching the baseline in both of these spots and the top line up here. Right? And then also practicing at least 2 of the word it. Right? So just like we made, but then the kick out becomes the up to the top line of the T. Down for the kick out, pick up your pencil, and cross your T. So at least 2 it, and at least 6 of the uppercase I. Then, scholars, remember, you want to take a photo of your I page and your J page and submit it in your Google Classroom. Thanks for joining me for another great day of cursive. Have a great weekend, scholars, and happy writing.